The Girl and the Flying Machine. Midnight wind braided the bell ropes of St. Bartram's Tower. On the parapet stood a 14-year-old girl with linen wings strapped to her shoulders and ashwood ribs pressed to her ribs. Below, torches licked the square. Someone shouted, "Witch!" Someone else whispered, "Fool!" Alys bent her knees, felt the wind gather like a horse about to run, and jumped. Weeks earlier, Alys had been the miller's daughter who fixed what others discarded. She mended broken spokes with willow, stitched torn nets with horsehair, and stole time to watch the swifts that wrote invisible lines across the sky. They never seemed to flap so much as lean on air, carving circles just ahead of rain. She noticed patterns. When the swifts banked, the outer wing stretched, the inner curled. When wind met the curved side of a feather, it slid faster and pulled. "Air is a river," she whispered, cupping her hand from window to wind, "and wings are boats." Her village crouched against a North Sea cliff, all right angles and thatch. The world, people said, was fixed as God's ledger. Only saints and kings were allowed to imagine new entries. At the forge, Alys bartered for offcuts of ash. At the abbey, she traded flour for torn vellum. In the loft of the mill, where the wheel's groan hid her hammering, she built a frame light as a ribcage, bound in rawhide, stretched in linen sealed with rendered tallow and honey. Her father found the first attempt. "You'll break your neck," he muttered, palms rough with fear. "I'm testing," she said, cheeks fire-hot. "Not leaping. Yet." She started with small trials. From the low granary roof she dropped feathered toys, then weighted them, then tied strings and felt the pull on her hands. She tilted angles. She learned that the slightest change, 2 fingers here, a breath there, could turn falling into sliding. She added a tail like a fish's fin and felt the whole contraption steady. Word crept. In a medieval town, whispers travel faster than swifts. Boys snickered and called her cloud mender. The reeve warned her father about unnatural contraptions. The priest visited with kind eyes and careful words. "Child, the Lord gave us earth. Let birds keep the sky." But Alys could not unknow what she had learned, that air had grip, that curves made lift, that courage and curiosity could be yoked like 2 oxen pulling 1 cart. She copied her observations on scraps of vellum with a charcoal nub, labeling them in the plainest language she had, lean, bank, glide, so any hand could read. The hinge night arrived with a storm stalled out to sea, sending long, steady wind across the cliff. "Tonight," she told her father softly, "the air is a road." He would not stop her and could not watch. He pressed a scrap of his old leather jerkin into her palm for padding, and made the sign of the cross anyway, just in case heaven weighed method along with madness. Up the abbey stairs she climbed, past walls painted with saints who endured fire and flame, patience compressed into color. At the top, torches guttered in the wind. The reeve, tipped off by a boy, had gathered men with halberds and fear. The priest pleaded, "Alys, come down." She stepped onto the parapet. The town seemed carved from shadow. Beyond, the dark sea breathed like a sleeping giant. "I am not defying God," she said loud enough for the square. "I am reading his world." Then she bent her knees, felt the wind take her cloak, and leapt into nothing. Nothing answered. Then everything did. The wings caught. Linen bellied. The straps bit her shoulders. She dropped a body's height and felt the air change, the way a river takes a boat's hull when you finally align it. She pressed her left wrist, lifted the right, and the machine banked along the cliff face, traveling not down but out. A cry lifted from the square, astonishment, then awe. She skimmed across the moat, above the reeds silvered by moon. Her shadow slid like an oarstroke over water. She felt how small tilt sang into big movements, how the tail kept her from fishtailing into stone. Past the mill she flew, her mill, where the wheel churned a low hymn. She aimed for the meadow beyond the ditch, tugged the nose slightly upward, and stalled. Alys hit the long grass in a tumble of linen, ash, breath, and prayer. Pain bit her ribs. The world rang. Then she was laughing and crying at once because there is a sound people make only after surviving their own idea. Torches came running. The first face was the priest's. flanked by men who no longer looked like an angry crowd, only people surprised by the size of the possible. The Reeve knelt, checked her limbs, then glanced back at the tower with quiet respect, as if it had confessed it wasn't the tallest thing in town after all. Not witchcraft, someone whispered. Witchcraft wouldn't crash. Her father reached her last, hands trembling. He lifted the wing, felt the weight. Light, he murmured, like a prayer that decided to have bones. Alys stood with help and, still shaking, showed them the little things. How the ribs arched, how the linen's curve shaped the wind, how a tail meant stability, not sorcery. She spoke plainly, each sentence a rung. Falling is easy. Guiding the fall is a craft. The crowd, greedy for wonder, watched the girl who had turned air into something you could lean on. The next day, the Reeve banned flights from the tower, for safety, but could not ban ideas. Alys returned to the loft and began again. Lighter wood, stronger joints, notes tucked into a leather satchel. Wings must curve like a smile. Weight must sit by the heart. Wind is a partner, not an enemy. Brother Thomas from the Abbey came at dusk with parchment salvaged from cracked hymnals. "Teach me the words," he said, "so I can copy them with the good ink." He drew her diagrams into a modest codex with careful hands. On the first page he wrote a title, "On the Guiding of Falls." Years would pass. Her machine would never cross an ocean, never climb above the castle keep. But children would walk the cliff path, and, where the meadow opened like a palm, they would spread their coats and run, and for a brief impossible second, their feet would not touch. Merchants would carry Brother Tomas's little book along the trade roads. In far cities, clever hands would trace those curves and add their own. The rumor of a girl who bent the wind would outlive the torches. Breakthrough is not always arrival. It is permission. The night Alys flew, she did not conquer the sky. She opened a door between fear and curiosity. She asked better questions, tested small, wrote what she learned, then tested again. That is how minds and centuries change. When people call your idea madness, check the wind. If it's steady, strap in. Jump from a height you've prepared for. Guide your fall until it becomes a glide. Leave notes for those who will lift from where you land. Remember, every story is only a beginning. Today's seeds of mindset will bloom into tomorrow's strength. Join us, subscribe, and let Mindset Stories rewire your mind one story